I work in HR for a mid-sized tech company, and we were interviewing candidates for an entry-level programming role. One applicant, a 23-year-old man, arrived with his mother, which was already unusual. What made it worse was that she was carrying his resume folder and portfolio like a personal assistant. When I called his name, both of them stood up. I gently explained that interviews were conducted one-on-one. She smiled politely and said, "Oh no, we attend together. We're a unit." She went on to explain that if we hired her son, we would also benefit from her management expertise. She insisted she needed to be present to negotiate his salary, ensure his snack access, and protect him from being taken advantage of in the workplace. Security escorted them both out before the interview even began. I'm a college professor, and one semester I received an extremely aggressive email from a parent demanding to know why her son received a C on a paper. I replied explaining that privacy laws prevent me from discussing grades with parents. The next day, she showed up unannounced during office hours, after driving 4 hours, and began pounding on my door. During the confrontation, she admitted she had written the paper herself and was personally offended that her writing earned a C. She genuinely believed confessing to academic dishonesty would convince me to raise the grade. It did not. My cousin is a drill sergeant and once told me about a recruit whose mother called the base commander 2 days into basic training. She demanded the drill sergeant stop yelling at her son because he was emotionally sensitive and required encouragement only. She also asked if she could send him pizza via Uber Eats because the cafeteria food upset his stomach. The recruit was discharged shortly after, mainly because he refused to tie his boots without calling home for reassurance. I managed a movie theater and hired a 17-year-old girl to work concessions. Her mother showed up to every single shift and stood at the end of the counter watching. If a customer complained, the mom would intervene and yell at them. If her daughter scooped popcorn incorrectly, the mom would run behind the counter and fix it herself. Eventually, I had to let the girl go, not because of her performance, but because her mother was a workplace hazard. The mom responded by threatening to sue me for emotional distress. I briefly dated a man in his late 20s. On our third date, we went back to his apartment to watch a movie. Halfway through, the front door unlocked and his mother walked in without knocking, carrying a laundry basket. She sat down and folded his underwear on the coffee table while asking me invasive questions about my genetics and finances. He didn't react, didn't apologize, just kept watching the movie. I left and blocked him immediately. I once coached high school swimmers. During a meet, one talented junior was disqualified for a false start, something that happens all the time. His father stormed onto the pool deck fully clothed, shoved the referee into the water, and tried to force his son back onto the starting block while the official struggled to resurface. Police were called. The swimmer quit the team the next day from embarrassment alone. I worked in university housing when a freshman moved in with his mother, literally. She brought an air mattress and began setting it up in his dorm room, telling his roommate she would stay just for the first semester until her son learned laundry basics. The roommate called our office in panic. We had to explain to a grown woman that she could not live in a 12 by 12 dorm room with 2 teenage boys. A friend of mine is a hairstylist. A 20-year-old man came in for a haircut, accompanied by his mother, who sat directly beside him. She dictated every movement of the scissors. Not that short. Leave the bangs. Thin it more. The son stayed silent. When it was time to pay, the mother handed over her card and told the stylist not to talk to her son so much because he gets distracted. I worked at a teen summer camp where one parent had sewn GPS trackers into her son's underwear and socks. She called the office hourly, panicking about his movement speed, breathing, and location. If he was in the woods too long, she assumed he was lost or injured. We eventually confiscated the clothing because it was invasive, disturbing, and a security risk. I'm a physician. A 26-year-old man came in for a routine physical, with his mother, who insisted on staying in the room. When I asked standard questions about smoking or sexual activity, she answered instantly with confident no's, while he stared at the floor. Once I asked her to step out for a urine sample, he immediately whispered, "I smoke daily and I think I have an STD. Please help me." My aunt is a real estate agent. She once showed a house to a newly married couple who should have been excited and optimistic. Instead, the husband's mother was present via FaceTime the entire tour. She ordered them to measure every room so she could see if her furniture would fit, because she planned to stay with them part-time. She disliked the kitchen and instructed her son to offer $50,000 below asking price. They didn't get the house. The wife stood in the driveway afterward looking like she was seriously reconsidering the marriage. I work in admissions at a highly competitive university. During alumni interviews, one applicant arrived with his father and a full camera setup. The father announced he would be recording the interview, for legal purposes, in case bias occurred. When I explained recording wasn't allowed, he began quoting constitutional rights. The applicant sat silently, crying the entire time. Unsurprisingly, the interview did not end in acceptance. I worked as a barista when a woman ordered an extremely complicated latte. After one sip, she spat it onto the counter and screamed that it was too hot. She then called her adult son from the parking lot and made him come inside to yell at me for her. He looked about 30 and couldn't make eye contact as he mumbled the complaint. It was one of the most uncomfortable displays of parental control I've ever witnessed. I work at a bank. A 24-year-old man came in with his fiancée to open a joint account. 5 minutes later, his mother burst in, furious, demanding to be added to the account so she could monitor spending and protect her son from being financially exploited. The son actually asked his fiancée if that was okay. She left immediately. I never saw either of them again. I'm a high school teacher and once took students on a museum field trip. One mother volunteered as a chaperone and brought a literal child leash. She clipped it to her 16-year-old son's backpack and walked him through the exhibits like a toddler. Other students took photos. The boy looked completely detached, like he had mentally exited the situation to survive. I work at a law firm where we hired a summer intern. On his first day, he didn't show up. Instead, his mother called and said he was too tired to commute and asked if he could work from home. When told no, she arrived the next day herself with a notebook, saying she would take notes on his behalf. We had to explain that jobs cannot be transferred like concert tickets. At a university orientation, I witnessed a mother feeding her adult son like a toddler. She cut his food into tiny pieces, blew on each bite, and physically fed him with a fork while he stared at his phone. He appeared completely healthy and unbothered. I lost my appetite instantly. I work at a car dealership. A young man purchased a sports car with his own money from a tech buyout. 2 days later, his mother drove the car back, threw the keys at me, and demanded we replace it with a Prius because it was too fast. When we explained it was already legally his, she slashed the tires in our parking lot so he couldn't drive it. My brother is a wedding photographer. At one wedding, the groom's mother wore a full white ball gown. During the vows, she stood directly behind her son holding his arm. When the officiant asked if he took the bride, the mother whispered loudly, "Think carefully. You can still come home." At the reception, the bride smashed cake into her face. I worked in a pharmacy when a woman called screaming that her son received generic medication. Her complaint wasn't about effectiveness, it was that the pills were round instead of oval. Her son was 42 years old. When I told her he needed to call himself, she said he was busy playing video games and that she handled his medical decisions. I'm a hiring manager, and once I called a candidate to formally offer him a position. His mother answered the phone. She told me he was currently napping and couldn't come to the phone, but that she would handle the details. She immediately began negotiating his salary, explaining he needed at least $80,000 because he had very expensive sneaker taste. When I insisted on speaking directly with him, she abruptly hung up. I rescinded the offer via email before the day ended. I was a server at an upscale restaurant when a young couple came in for what was clearly supposed to be a date. Unfortunately, the man's mother was seated at the table right next to them, turned fully toward their table like an audience member. She ordered food for both of them, corrected their choices, and monitored the entire interaction. When the bill came, she grabbed it, removed the automatic gratuity that had been added due to earlier issues, and leaned over to the girlfriend to say, "My son usually dates prettier girls. You should feel lucky." I volunteer as a scout leader. During one overnight camping trip, a father checked his weather app at home and saw that it might drizzle. At 2 a.m., he hiked 3 miles into the campsite carrying a massive tarp. He spent over an hour loudly covering his son's tent while waking up every camper in the area. The son was mortified beyond words. The father then slept in his car at the trailhead, just in case. I work at a gym where a man was training with a personal trainer. His mother followed them the entire time with a towel and water bottle. After every set, she wiped his forehead and handed him water like a boxing coach. She repeatedly told the trainer the weights were too heavy because her son had fragile joints. The son was a massive bodybuilder who looked like he could bench press the trainer. I'm a landlord. I rented an apartment to a college student, and her father called me every single night for the first month. He asked whether I had checked the locks, tested the smoke detectors, and monitored who was coming over. Eventually, he installed a security camera pointing directly at her front door and gave me access so we could watch together. I shut it down immediately and told him it was illegal. I work in IT support. A new hire came in saying he couldn't access internal company systems. It turned out his mother had installed parental control software on his laptop before his first day. The software was blocking our servers because they weren't on her approved list. We had to completely wipe and reformat the computer. The employee was 22 years old. I used to work at a bakery when a woman ordered a birthday cake for her son. She brought a color swatch for the icing and a list of banned ingredients due to texture preferences. The list included flour and sugar. When I explained that cake requires both, she said her son was turning 30 and needed to watch his figure. She told me to get creative. I teach spin classes. A mother signed up with her adult daughter and positioned herself right beside her. During intense cardio segments, the mom repeatedly reached over and turned down the resistance on her daughter's bike, yelling not to overdo it or get sweaty. Eventually, the daughter got off the bike and walked out without saying a word. The mom chased her, shouting, "I paid for this." I work at a veterinary clinic. A woman brought in a cat that technically belonged to her adult son. She wouldn't let him hold the carrier or answer questions. When the vet started explaining medication side effects, she covered her son's ears and said she didn't want him hearing that information. The son stood there playing a mobile game the entire time. I was in RA in college during finals week when one student's mother set up a literal tent on the campus quad. She stocked it with energy drinks and snacks and texted her son every 30 minutes to come refuel. She also stopped random students to ask if they had good notes he could borrow. Campus security eventually removed her for harassing students.